Hi there, and welcome to this video. This video is going to be about what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. Quite clearly, that's not the unit. Or is it? Yes, the lights are still hanging down. I haven't touched the soundbar and I've done absolutely nothing with the aesthetics of the unit. But I have been busy. I've been trying to get the best video signal out of these consoles that I possibly can, to try and get the most of them. And in the last 2 weeks, I had a bit of a breakthrough. Now, before I go into which units I was working on and what the breakthrough was, I feel I need to explain something that not everyone will know, but a lot of you will. Here in the UK and Europe, we had a cable called the SCART cable. Now, this cable was never released in America, so they are probably unfamiliar with it. But it's a very, very, very useful cable. It is capable of carrying a multitude of different video signals. Everything from composite, S-video, up to RGB SCART. And RGB, true RGB, makes these consoles look fantastic. And what's better is a lot of these units, a lot of these consoles, actually support it. Now, the three consoles I've been struggling with is the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64, and the GameCube. Now, it's worth pointing out at this point that the Nintendo 64 is not capable of supporting RGB SCART. However, I imported a chip from Australia called the N64 RGB, which is a chip that you solder some wires onto your video chip, you solder it to this chip, and then from this chip to the output. So you can still use the same cables, but you can achieve RGB. Now, the way you do that is you'd either find the Super Nintendo RGB SCART lead or the GameCube one. So I did that. I had to look for them. And I bought some off-brand ones for all three consoles, and the outputs were appalling. So I'm going to move up to the Super Nintendo. Now, with this off-brand cable, you can see that the signal is just appalling. It's just got hashing all over it, and it really does affect how you can view the game. And I did some research on this, and a lot of people suggest using a cable that uses Lumia for sync rather than composite. So I went searching around for some cables that actually did that, and found this website called Retro Gaming Cables. And they supplied just that, a Super Nintendo RGB SCART with Lumia sync. So I bought that, plugged it in, and was pleasantly surprised with a very crisp and clear signal. As you can see, it looks phenomenally better. So I thought I'd try it on the Nintendo 64. Now, before, I was getting an incredibly bad signal from this. I did initially think it was the chip, but I thought I'd stick with it just for the time being. When I plugged this new Lumia cable in, I was again very pleasantly surprised. It was so clear and so crisp. Then I thought, would it work on the GameCube? Unfortunately, no. Nintendo did release an official GameCube SCART lead, which I managed to get off eBay. So I plugged that in, and although the image isn't as perfect as the first two, it's brilliant. It's so clear. I can actually play it. So now I've got all three of those systems outputting through RGB SCART. Now, there may be some other units on there that support RGB SCART that you're unaware of. RGB SCART has been around for absolutely ages. For instance, the Sega Master System 1 is capable of RGB SCART. Unfortunately, the Master System 2 only has RF unless you modify it. The Sega Mega Drive does support RGB SCART. The 32X does support RGB SCART. In fact, the Mega Drive 1 and the Master System 1 use the same output. The Mega Drive 2 and the 32X use the same output. The Sega Saturn is capable of RGB SCART, although very few people actually make RGB SCART for them. And whilst yes, the Dreamcast can support RGB SCART, not many people use it because it is capable of a higher quality output. Now, the Nintendo Entertainment System does not support RGB SCART. That only supports composite out. And the Commodore Amiga CD32 doesn't support it either. But that supports S-Video out and composite out. Stuff like the Wii, the original Xbox, the PlayStation 2 do support it, but they also support component out, which again is a much better signal. And of course Xbox 360, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 4 all support HDMI. If you're not using that, why not? But there's another unit up there that does support RGB SCART. Some people might not be aware of. It's the Atari Jaguar. Now, it's a very odd console when you look at the back of it because it has got basically the motherboard exposed. But one of those is the RGB interface. And you can get RGB SCART leads for it. There's a lot of homebrew ones around. But there is a website that I've got the cable for the Atari Jaguar and both my Mega Drive 1 and 2. And that is called Retro Computer Shack. In fact, Retro Computer Shack doesn't only make the cables for my Atari Jaguar and my Sega Mega Drive, they also do it for my Amiga 1200. Now those cables, again, like retro gaming cables, are incredibly high quality cables. And the signal they give is fantastic. So before you run out and buy any cable that looks good and cheap, don't. Because you're going to let yourself in for some disappointment. I would recommend, if you want to get some decent cables for some of these units, have a look on Retro Gaming Cables or Retro Computer Shack, because they make some fantastic cables. I have a SCART lead for that, and that thing looks absolutely brilliant through it. So have a hunt around. If you can't find or afford the official cables, go to one of those websites. I'm sure they'll have one. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's helped you out a little bit. If you have any questions, comments or anything like that, please leave them below. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you again for the next video.